In the future, people will finally have the ability to change a child's genetics before birth. Parents can now choose the genetic characteristics of their children, eliminating diseases, flaws in appearance, and any imperfections. Life expectancy increased, and society was filled with perfect people. But among them were still those who were naturally conceived. They were despised, considered second-class citizens. Jerome Morrow was preparing for his job at Gattaca. But his every morning did not begin with the usual preparations, but with a careful disguise. He carefully secured a bag of urine on his hip, filled an artificial finger with blood from the refrigerator, and thoroughly vacuumed the keyboard, removing the smallest particles. Any carelessness could cost him everything. Soon Sherlock approached him with the news: his candidacy had been approved. He's going to Titan. Irene Cassini congratulated him. Together they watched the rocket soar into the sky, illuminating the horizon with a fiery flash. Back at his desk, he felt tense. It turned out he wasn't the real Jerome Morrow. Vincent had been born naturally, which in the world of genetic engineering meant only one thing: he would be a second-class citizen. A nurse took a drop of blood from the newborn and told his parents that he would be weak and would not live long. The mother, Marie, carefully took the baby in her arms. She did not know whether to be happy about the newborn. The second time they decided to use the services of genetic engineering. That's how Anton was born. He was perfect in everything: stronger, taller, faster. His brother's superiority was obvious from childhood, and even his parents looked at him with a special pride. Vincent, on the other hand, felt superfluous. The only thing that gave him hope was the dream of space. He read books, watched rocket launches, dreamed of traveling among the stars. But the dream seemed impossible. After all, people like him would never be accepted into the service of space. He was considered a second-class citizen. The two brothers often competed in swimming. Anton always won. But that day was different. For the first time he overtook his brother in swimming. Anton, exhausted, began to drown, and Vincent rescued him. That was the first time he felt confident in his abilities. After that, Vincent left. He left his family, took a job as a janitor at Gattaca, and watched the professionals working there every day, imagining himself in their shoes. He didn't want to live his whole life like that. There was only one way for him to become someone else. That's how he met Jerome Morrow, a man whose genetic code was the epitome of perfection. High intelligence, phenomenal stamina, perfect eyesight, long life. But an accident left him disabled. Now he makes a living selling his DNA. Vincent took his name, his blood, his life. Eye-colored contact lenses, a new haircut, painful leg lengthening surgery. Every day he disposed of his cells, his fingernails, his hair, supplying the lab with other people's urine and blood. Jerome supplied him with biological samples and Vincent supplied him with his livelihood. He was close to fulfilling his dream, but that day everything changed. The mission director was found beaten to death in a hallway, and an investigation began. Investigators comb Gattaca thoroughly, collecting DNA samples. Irene notices the tension in Vincent's eyes and decides to check his workplace. Finding a strand of hair, she sends it for analysis and is relieved to learn that her colleague is the real Jerome Morrow. Meanwhile, the police discover an invalid genetic code in the lab. Investigators find information on Vincent Freeman, a former Gattaca janitor who, according to records, is long dead. Suspecting that the killer may be hiding among the employees, they decide to check the logbooks. Vincent discovers this and, returning home, begins to panic. He considers running away, but Jerome reassures him. In the evening, Vincent and Irene go on a date. At this time, the police step up checks, set up roadblocks and conduct a mass biometric check in an attempt to establish Vincent's identity. After the concert, the couple is caught at a checkpoint. Realizing that his contact lenses might give him away, Vincent takes them off, depriving himself of clear vision. They pass the checkpoint without arousing suspicion. Irene takes him to a sunny farm where they greet the dawn. The cops find another sample of Vincent's DNA, on a discarded paper cup. Suspicions are heightened. They are now certain Vincent is impersonating someone else. The launch was 2 days away. In the evening he went out with Irene again. At a fine restaurant, he twirled Irene in a dance, their bodies moving in unison. All was well until the police burst in. Vincent's face contorted in surprise, but he instantly regained his composure, grabbed Irene's hand, and rushed away. Through the chaos and shouting they made their way to the emergency exit. One of the officers rushed to stop them, but Vincent beat him to the punch. They disappeared into the maze of alleys. Irene looked at him with a puzzled expression. Vincent didn't explain and just kissed her. But the fear remained, and before dawn Vincent left her bed and went to the beach. Meanwhile, at the police department, an investigator was studying the photographs. The outline of Vincent's face, the lines of his jaw too familiar, too similar. They wanted to take a DNA test from him, but Joseph intervened, saying that Jerome was the best man for the job. Irene watched this, clenching her fingers tensely. She guessed that Vincent was impersonating someone else. The detectives went to Jerome's house, and Vincent immediately alerted him to the situation. The detectives knocked on the house, the door opened, and Jerome appeared in front of it, haggard but calm. The detective senses something amiss, at which point he receives a call from the police. The suspect in the death of the mission director has been apprehended. After the detective leaves, Vincent appears and apologizes to Irene for deceiving her. But Irene does not want to listen to him. Meanwhile, at the police station, the truth is revealed: Joseph was the murderer. It turns out that he killed the mission director because he wanted to cancel the flight to the planet Titan. Joseph wanted to launch the rocket faster, and there was a disagreement between them, so he got rid of him. However, the investigator did not feel satisfied. Later, as night shrouded the city again, the detective wanted to talk to Vincent. The detective confessed that he was Anton, his brother. Past and present converged in their views. Fate had pushed them together again, but now they stood on opposite sides of the law. Anton envied that his brother, born without genetic engineering, had reached such heights. He doesn't want to believe that Vincent is stronger than he is, so he challenges him, and once again the waves become their arena. They swam non-stop, oblivious to time. It was only when Anton started to sink that Vincent stopped and came to his aid. After that, Anton decided to leave him alone, and Vincent returned home. Jerome leaned back in his chair and looked at Vincent with a slight smile. There was no regret or sadness in his gaze, only quiet satisfaction. He told him that he had left enough of his genetic material so that Vincent could return when the time came. At dawn, Jerome handed Vincent an envelope. There was something detached in his eyes, but Vincent didn't ask any questions. He simply took the envelope and walked out, leaving behind a house that had become a place where the impossible became a reality. In Gattaca, preparations were feverishly underway. Vincent had already stepped into the whitewashed corridor leading to the launch pad when Lamar stopped him. "You have to take a urine sample before you fly," he explained. An icy chill ran down Vincent's spine. He hadn't brought Jerome's sample with him. Having no other choice, he filled the container with his own urine, and Lamar ran the test. The red signal lit up instantly. Vincent froze, time seemed to stop, but Lamar didn't call security. He looked at Vincent for a long moment, and understanding flashed in his eyes. Then he spoke about his son, who dreamed of working at Gattaca but had been turned down because his genes weren't good enough. Turns out he knew all along, but didn't give it away. With a keystroke, the red signal changed to green. Vincent met his gaze silently, not knowing how to express his gratitude. But Lamar had already turned away, letting him go on ahead. Jerome, meanwhile, was moving slowly through the house. There was no fuss or fear in his movements, only a quiet confidence. He crept toward the incinerator. Once inside, he closed his eyes and waited for the fire to ignite. At the same instant, the rocket shuddered, shaking with the power of its engines. Vincent opened the envelope, his fingers trembling. There was only one thing inside, a strand of Jerome's hair. He ran his fingers over it, feeling its smoothness, then clenched it in his fist. That was the end of the feed game. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe and like the channel. See you soon.